Sony is without a doubt a key innovator in the filmmaking technology space. Yet, as great as their cameras are, they continue to be a confounding and frustrating company at times. In May, Sony announced the FX2, a hybrid camera recycling the sensor from the A7 IV while adding some of the video focus features from the FX3. Now, I wasn't that interested in the FX2, except it notably shipped with the new Big 6 menu feature, which Sony designed to mimic the AC side menu from the Venice 1 and 2. The FX2 isn't the first Sony camera to get this menu update. It was added to the Burano earlier this year, and it was added to the FX3 last week. And while Sony did manage to drop this FX3 update ahead of their planned September release, it is still a bit confusing why the FX2 got this feature months ahead of the FX3, and all the while, we're still months out from the FX6 receiving the same update, and arguably, that camera needs it more than the FX3 did. At first glance, this might give off the idea that the FX2 is cutting edge, but it's not being positioned above the FX3 or FX6 in any way, which is obvious when you compare them. The FX2 is cheaper and lacks other key features. This is confusing from a marketing perspective. Typically, when you release products, you create a hierarchy of features. The more expensive products get the best features, and as you move down the list in price, you get less features. It makes sense. Obviously, the company should want to sell its most expensive products, so they keep certain features set aside for their more expensive cameras. And in years past, this was necessary. More expensive cameras cost more to make, and the top-of-the-line sensors and features were expensive to include. But now, as tech gets better and cheaper, it's a little harder to figure out where to draw that line. Either way, Sony doesn't always follow this line of thinking. Case in point, the new FX2. Maybe it's not a huge deal that the FX2 got this feature early, but that's not really the point. We've already been waiting almost a year to get this on the FX3, and we're still more than 6 months away from getting it on the FX6. This update is a long overdue fix for the menu system of these cameras, which is a known weak point for Sony. Not to mention, the update isn't even going to fix all the issues people have with the menus. The Big 6 menu update was first announced way back in November of 2024, when Sony announced a 15-month software update roadmap. This roadmap included updates for the Venice, Burano, FX6, and FX3. And even at the time, I was conflicted about the announcement. Some of these features were exciting, sure, but why such a long rollout timeline? Sony's hardware is top of the line, but their software has been a pain point for years, with users often saying it feels designed by engineers first and filmmakers second. So, when Sony announces they're going to do something to try to better that experience, it's exciting. But then being told you need to wait a year for that improvement to launch feels a bit like a monkey's paw. Then add into the mix that they're releasing a new camera for a different demographic of Sony users, which is getting that software update early. It kind of feels like a slap in the face. As an FX6 and FX3 user, this doesn't make me want to buy an FX2. The camera isn't really for me, but it does make me confused as to why a cheaper camera is getting early access to a feature that we've been waiting for. The Big 6 update also includes a 1.5x anamorphic desqueeze option for the FX3 and FX6. Frankly, this is another feature these cameras should have had at launch, so needing to wait a year for these features to be added, it just adds to the frustration. And if that wasn't enough, Sony's going to make things just a little more confusing. At this time, there is no official word from Sony on if the FX2 is getting a 1.5 desqueeze option at all. FX2 users might have hoped to see this announced alongside the FX3 update, considering the FX2 shipped with a lot of the features present in that update, but no word. Now, there is absolutely no reason why a desqueeze option should be sequestered between different camera bodies. The FX2 and FX3 are marketed as cinema cameras, so they should have this feature, full stop. Hopefully, this is just an issue of marketing and communication, and the FX2 will get 1.5 desqueeze, but at this time, there's no indication of that I can find online. This brings us to the crux of the issue. Sony is caught between whether its cameras should be a tool or a tech toy. And truly, I can understand their struggle, and I can see how they've ended up in this position. When Sony treats their cameras more like a tech toy, there are some real perks for them. By stretching out their software releases, they stay in the news cycle. And as these camera updates trickle out, content creators hop on YouTube and TikTok to talk about the software, which keeps people talking about Sony and its cameras. I'm sure this translates to sales for Sony, and it also gives them the chance to say, we care about our users. We are continuing to provide value over time instead of just forgetting about our cameras after launch. I hear that, but here's the flip side. The only way they're able to stagger these software updates is by withholding features and sandbagging their cameras at launch. And as a user, it can be confounding to watch the decision-making unfold. A software update which adds features to your camera should be exciting, but with Sony it can also be frustrating because a lot of the time these features should and probably could have been included from the jump. When given the choice between having something to look forward to or having access to valuable tools as soon as possible, I'm always going to choose the latter. Now, so far I've honed in on the Big 6 menu and 1.5 Desqueeze, but those are just a couple examples of Sony software emissions. Another prime example of this phenomenon is false color, which is an exposure checking tool seen on a variety of cinema cameras. At this time though, the only Sony cameras with false color in camera are the Venice 1 and Venice 2, and I really don't understand this one. As mentioned before, I understand the need for a feature hierarchy. But there isn't a single person on this planet that was considering buying an FX3, but then decided to buy an $80,000 Venice 2 instead so they could have false color. These cameras are for a completely different demographic of Sony users, so Sony wouldn't be losing anything by putting this feature on the FX3. And if anything, they would gain continuity between their cameras, so that when a Venice 2 owner decides to buy or rent an FX3 for a shoot because they need a small camera, they won't feel punished for using it. Now, to be fair, Sony hasn't completely ignored false color. They did finally add it to their smartphone control app. An iPhone monitor does not work for every filmmaking scenario, and hiding false color behind this wall is strange. Another big Sony feature omission is open gate recording, which allows you to use your full sensor's width and height, which can give you more deliverable options. I suppose this one makes a bit more sense for why Sony would omit this from their lower-end cameras, but it's not even present in the Barana. Open gate 3.2 recording modes can be super helpful, especially when shooting anamorphic. When shooting the B-roll for this video, as well as my 400X video, I made the decision to shoot with the Pixis 6K instead of the FX3 or FX6 because of open gate, which gave me a taller final image. You can see the difference here. This is the tallest possible image from the FX3 with a 1.5x anamorphic lens versus the Pixis. It's also worth noting many of the Panasonic Lumix cameras have a bevy of open gate and anamorphic options at a lower cost than the FX3. Functional menus, desqueeze options, false color, and open gate have all been points of contention between Sony and its users. Go into any YouTube comment section related to Sony cameras nowadays, and you'll find a healthy dose of people making fun of Sony for prioritizing menu updates over some of these other features people really want. And right now, that might not matter to Sony. It seems clear their sales are doing just fine, but that doesn't mean it will always be that way. Blackmagic and Panasonic are hot on Sony's tail. I don't make this video to chastise Sony and say that they're bad. I'm airing these complaints because I truly hope that Sony will hear them out and find ways to improve the experience, because I know that these changes might seem small to them, but they really can be the difference between whether a Sony camera or a competitor's camera is the right tool for the job. Let me know in the comments below. Do any of these software omissions bug you, or have you switched or considered switching to other cameras because of missing software features? Let me know. Thank you guys for watching. Please do give a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.